Today on The Success Study, join me as I go through the made-to-measure suiting process of Crane Brothers and talk with Fraser about what makes this company such an iconic New Zealand brand. So, do you want to just tell me a little bit about how you started out in menswear?
For a long time, I was actually in hospitality and found that I was starting work when everyone was finishing. And at that stage, there was a part-time job at Country Road, and I thought that would work in quite well. I can do that during the day and carry on with my hospitality in the evening. And then that part-time job ended up becoming a full-time job, and now almost 30 years later, I'm still doing retail.
Yeah.
So but it's evolved along the way, and I've worked with some really lovely people and some very smart people as well.
And whenabouts did you start with Crane Brothers?
I found out Murray was looking at opening a store here in Christchurch about 8 years ago now. And I approached him and said, look, I'd love the opportunity to go into partnership with you with the store. That worked with what Murray had in mind, and we've now had the store for about 7 years, which has just been fantastic.
And what's your favourite part about working in this industry?
I think for me, the joy of seeing a client realise how fantastic he looks in something well tailored, and him seeing the fact of how striking he looks, just because it actually suits him.
And for you, being in a partnership, do you enjoy the kind of aspect of owning part of your own business?
In the business I've worked in, always worked as if I was a shareholder in the business. Now to have it realised is just a continuation of how I've always worked in a business anyway. So the joy now is actually seeing the fruits of the labour, and optimistically seeing something grow as well, which is my own. Yeah.
And then in terms of suits themselves, for a lot of people that don't know much about kind of Crane Brothers, or they might not know much about kind of the made-to-measure suiting process, would you just give a brief overview of kind of what Crane Brothers is and what kind of garments that you do here?
We're in a really fortunate position that we have a ready-to-wear range, which encompasses obviously our classic suits and shirts, but also a more softer casual sort of look as well, from jeans to sneakers to suede. I would almost sort of go in far as saying it's a lifestyle brand, with a specialisation into curating what clients want to as well, because not only is there the wear range, but there's a custom-made side of it. So we can do everything from custom-made knitwear to outerwear to custom-made shoes. So as a rule, if there's a requirement a customer wants, I would believe we could probably fulfil that.
What do you think the primary benefit of wearing something customised or something from Crane Brothers?
I have maybe a terrible throwaway line I use quite a lot. You catch what you fish with. So depending on what you want to achieve, I believe clothing has such a disarming benefit to achieving a job role, a romantic interest, a rapport with somebody. Instead of just consuming something that's out there, a lot of what we tend to do is, and I've used the word before, you create something for somebody that reflects what they're trying to achieve, and then they look good on them. Rather than just settling on what's available, you are really now actually just personalising an outfit, a look, a concept for a client, which ultimately I think they always feel better in, and just that psychology of feeling better in something allows you to do a little more. So I think that's probably where we have the greatest advantage, is that we can really distill down what a client wants to achieve and then actually translate that into actually clothing. And I need that to work because I then need them to come back and just wash and repeat that process again in a different guise. So it's a lot of the time it's building that trust and rapport, and then they look at that as an opportunity to just grow on that and create a much greater width in their wardrobe to fit more occasions. Weekend, casual, dinner, corporate. Yeah.
So today we're looking at a tweed jacket for me for the winter months, something a bit warmer. So would you mind just explaining, I suppose, what is tweed and why would someone look for it in a garment?
Initially, I would always think of these having an aesthetic to them first. My belief is that they are fit for purpose of a particular look. It's like, having a classic navy blazer isn't a tweed jacket.
Yeah.
These have a weight and a feel to them that has this sort of, I guess, I don't want to use the word nostalgia, but there is that estate aspect of these jackets as well. But there's also the utilitarian aspect of them. They are a wool, so they have a natural ability to repel rain. Of course, these were designed a lot for the highlands and the moors or the estates in Europe, so it can be quite grey and cold and manky and damp. So they just actually form a practical aspect of, they've got just the weight of the fabric that I call that tweed-esque. So it does give you that ability to put something on that is effectively insulation. And a lot of the colours are all based around the natural environment as well. And then you have the highlight colours that would represent particular clans or houses or distinguishing different estates. They're just practical fabrics.
Yeah.
But I think there's just that aspect of a lean back to something quite iconic and heritage rather than too contemporary. So I think that's the joy in these fabrics, is they have a sense of place as well. Yeah.
Okay, and then in terms of specific fabric selection, do you have any recommendations on which kind of pattern or which kind of colourings you'd gear towards?
I tend to think of colours very simply. Your greys and charcoals and blacks tend to be event stylistic evening. Your blue bases a little more day corporate garments, and then as soon as you start going into the browns and into the neutrals, I see them as being slightly more casual. But that can easily be a question of what environment you're in at any particular time. I would quite happily suggest you could do a range of all of them, and then they would fit different briefs quite nicely. But obviously with what you're considering, obviously those more neutral tones, the greens and the browns and the warmer colours, there's no shortage of choice. I think that's the aspect of it, is which one don't you choose, more than the question of which one do you choose. Yeah. I do have an immediate thought, but I'll be interested to see what you do.
Yeah.
I always find on these fabric that have weight to them, you want a button that sort of represents that weight as well.
Okay.
And I find the horn buttons, as in bovine horn, tend to rest well from a balance. The one that I like is picking up on that same effect of the warmer red, sort of chocolatey browns, and obviously that variegated, multi sort of coloured running it through it there. So that would have been my instant pick. Mm-hmm. If you're wanting something that had a slightly more preference for several reasons. One is I love the fact that there's this two-tone effect running through it, which is like the fabric itself. It's got the darker that will pick up on the indigo, it's got the more reddier, richer brown that will sit obviously beautifully on the fabric. And now linings is just personal preference. Mm-hmm. You can approach this several ways. You either go tone on tone, which would be chocolate on chocolate, or you could then go for a lighter tonal colour, which would be something along the lines of caramel. See, I find
probably that one.
And then if it wasn't that one, I would have then gone and pulled the highlight colours out.
Okay.
So I would have then either done so that there, in some ways, is pulling out the highlight colours.
There you go. I mean, I do remember Murray saying, he said, look, just get a generic lining, because the worst thing is if you stop liking a suit because of something as small as the lining being a really bright colour.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
I actually think I'd like to go for that one. What do you think?
There was no wrong choice.
Yeah, no, perfect. Let's do that.
I like to edit 30 odd choices down to 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Fraser, in a sentence, why would you say it's worth the investment of a made-to-measure suit?
For me, more often than not, it's not only about fit, but it's about choice. If you're buying something a little more unique and personalised, you generally won't find that off the rack. You will find that through choice and selection. A lot of people will fit a suit okay with some alterations. The reality is, without spending a lot more, you can have a tailor-made suit that's only made for you. So it becomes uniquely yours. The proportions of it will become your own proportions rather than a generic block. If anything, it should allow the garment to fall and drape a lot better. It should have a lot more comfort but still being quite tailored. So with the luxury of time, because I think that's probably what is not always appreciated, is luxury and time are very similar, because most people don't have the time. So that investment in 4 to 6 weeks of having something made is exactly that. It is an investment because it required foresight and the ability to wait for something. And it's never underestimate the value in waiting for something. We tend to get hungrier the longer we wait for things. So part of the pleasure is conceiving something and then waiting for it.
So for me, it's actually about kind of building up some credibility that, you know, although I'm young, I want people to constantly be guessing my age. You know, when people guess kind of 28, 25, it just makes me feel a bit more at ease, as in whatever I say or whatever value I'm producing is credited at the value that's produced, not necessarily at my age. And I think through suiting is quite an easy way for me to do that. I say, you know, I'm 19, I dress like I'm 40 and people think I'm 25. So it's kind of figuring out, you know, people do judge based on appearance.
Human nature, doesn't matter what someone says, that we can't help ourselves, rightly or wrongly, and there's nothing making a judgment, just let down, relax. So if you can use that human nature to your advantage, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I find clothing very disarming because more often than not, it's just a great way of presenting yourself. I always look at it, why would you do yourself a disservice by not?
Yeah.
Because we're doing a heritage pattern there, I think that classic lapel width with a little bit of width always looks really balanced.
So something quite similar to this width?
Quite similar to that. Again, because you've got quite a sizable pattern within that tweed, it's quite nice to show that off with a generous lapel width.
Yeah.
Of course, we always finish off a hand-sewn Milanese button.
Yeah.
We will always do that very soft roll lapel rather than a pressed or a fuse. We use a floating canvas underneath that, which will give you that effortless, softer look to the jacket as well. For this particular jacket.
Yeah, perfect. No, that sounds great. Particularly, I love like a good lapel. It's often a joke between me and my friends talking about lapels.
Right.
And I say, I just think it distinguishes a jacket out from the crowd, particularly if you look at like a lower end jacket. They're often quite thin, and it's just kind of makes people curdle in a little bit. I often find like a wider lapel just kind of opens it up and a bit more confidence.
I was going to say generous by nature.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You would almost be inclined to say more of an artisan lapel rather than just something consumed off the high street. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the suit up.
Yeah, well, I think by the time that fabric is ordered from the UK and sent to our tailor, we're probably looking at about 4 to 6 weeks.
Perfect. I'll see you in 4 to 6 weeks. Looking
Excellent.
forward to it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Right,
Perfect.
here we go.
Thank you so much.
Let's get that to sit nicely through the collar and through the front. Have the sleeve perfectly through that tricep and chest. Loving the balance on the jacket, it's nice and square. And I think the more you wear it, the better it's going to get.
Yeah, no, it looks fantastic. So, do you want to just run people through maybe some of the stylings of the jacket, the pockets and the lapel, seeing as I've got it up?
Yeah. So what we're looking at here, we've got that lovely hand-finished Milanese longer buttonhole there. We have, of course, the working buttons on the sleeve that will actually allow that to sit a little bit better with your double cuff shirts. We've got the horn button sitting on there, which picks up the tone of the fabric beautifully. And of course, being a moon fabric from the Shetland, that is absolutely superb through there. And otherwise, classic peak lapel, soft shoulders, and so that's giving you that lovely silhouette through the chest there with that floating canvas. So no, I'm delighted how that looks.
Yeah, no, perfect.
And
Amazing.
the tailors have done a beautiful job on the pattern matching there as well. So you've got all those beautiful lines coming absolutely even on sleeve and body. No, spectacular.
A huge thank you to the team at Crane Brothers, not only for the new jacket, but for allowing us to come and film this episode of the Success Study. I'll see you next time.